What is numb? I always wondered. How does it feel? Everyday death is present. How does that make you feel? I wondered. Through this documentary, I aim to research her story, hopefully get an answer to my question. What is numb?
If I could define numb in one sentence, it would be to just be blank. She was my first best friend, you could say. I guess I met her at birth. You could say that. My favorite memory with her was every autumn we would go apple picking. She was my Nana. Most of my life, I remember her being sick. So I remember she would have hospital visits or doctor's visits that I would go with her to, but I didn't know exactly what was going on. And she always seemed happy to me and never looked like she was in pain until later on. One time, coming home, I was still young from school, and they were like, oh, we're going to take a trip to New York, but Nana isn't doing well. So that's what we would do. We just went up there, and I saw her in the hospital bed before, but I didn't think anything of it, and she ended up coming home, but you could tell that she was weaker, and I remember it was so nice to be living in the same house again. But months later, that was it for her, too. I remember that she was losing herself within the last few days. I remember my mom telling me how she would spend time with her while I was at school, and she would look and stare in a corner and mumble names of old cousins or her deceased brother who wasn't here anymore. So my mom felt like it was coming close. As for the last day, I do remember that day pretty clearly. I remember going to school regular day, because we came home off of the bus stop and my mom was there, and she was like, she's not doing too well, but she's held on and she wanted to say goodbye to you guys. And I didn't really understand exactly what she meant by goodbye, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in and say hi to her regular. And so I came into her room, and she was sort of in hospice, but at home. So I remember going up to her, and she wasn't very conscious. Her eyes were open, and she was breathing really, really slow. It wasn't fast and crazy breathing. And I just remember coming in, and she held my hand, and she didn't say anything to me. I don't think she had the energy to. I remember after that, I walked into the living room, and I remember my mom just coming and being like, okay, come in. And I just came into the room, and we were all just watching her. I don't know why we were just looking at her. We weren't able to really talk to her, but we were just there. And I just remember her taking a big breath and then sigh, almost not of a sigh of relief, just a sigh of just letting everything go. And then that was it for her. It's at first unbelievable. You feel okay, they're gone for a second, but then you realize they will be gone forever, and that's when it really hurts. So you kind of get this pain that fills you up, and it makes you feel dang, it's just heavy. And you wish that you could just talk to the person some more, or just come up with more questions you want to ask them, or anything, but you just end up talking to yourself and wondering what they could have said to you, and that hurts. One thing I do remember that the nurse did, though, is she told us to open our doors. She said, if you want to open a door or the window inside the room, we also had a door right outside of the guest room. And she said to open up the doors to let the spirit go, to kind of make sure she knew that she was free and that she could go and leave us and that it was okay. Which I feel like now it's a really beautiful thing to do. I would have never thought of that at the time. But no one was a mess. I just remember my mom was good. She wasn't like crying horrendously. I think she was just trying to keep it together at the moment. But I know that one hit her pretty hard too. And after that, I just remember not being able to sleep that night. I kept waking up. I was in my own room and I just couldn't do it. And I went into my parents' room. And we still had her dog at the time, so I took the little dog, and I got my pillow and my blanket, and I went in my parents' room, and I just laid there for the night. And what's weird is that I remember staying up all night. They were watching Oprah Winfrey on the TV. It was like at late night. And then in the middle of the night, on Disney Channel was playing Even Stevens, and I'll never forget that either, because that was the show on that I watched all night because I could not sleep. But that was kind of like the final days. And then they just tried to distract us so much from feeling what had happened, which is like I didn't really understand what had happened because I was so young. I think I was like 11 or 10 at the time. But I remember the next day they woke us up. They wanted us to be so busy. They took us to Disney. The next day it was like, it's called Downtown Disney, but they had a Disney Quest area where you could just, the whole building was games. You could play like inside Mario Kart with the bungee cars, everything. I just remember they kept us busy so our mind wasn't on it. That weekend was a lot of fun because I remember they bought us brand new DSs too, which was real hot at the time, and I was surprised that they bought us those, but I remember those were like the final days. Oh man, if I could ever see my Nana again, I would ask her so many questions. I have so many questions about her life. Like as me growing up into my own person and my own woman. You know, I've always butt heads with my mother. So I would ask her questions about my mother, like how did you deal with her? It's one of the first questions I would ask. And then the second would be, you know, I just want to know more about her. I feel like I didn't get to know like how she felt as she was going through everything growing up. Like I've only heard stories about her childhood and some of it isn't that good, and I just want to know how she made it through it, because I feel like, damn, I'm going through it in life sometimes, but when you hear some of the stories from back then, it's like I would like to know what is her way of life, how she stayed so happy, and how was she like the light of my life all the time when she went through so much herself. Death has come and gone in my life, but I feel like it's normal at this point. Like the first one can be like, wow, people can actually die. Like you've seen it in movies and everything, but you're like, dang, those graveyards are real. There are people under those grounds.
Are you afraid of death?
I'm not afraid of death. Oh, sorry. I would say I am not afraid of death. I feel like it happens to everyone. It can be painful. I think what leads to death can be painful. But death itself, I feel like there's nothing to be afraid of. You're just ending something. Everyone has their own vice. Everyone. Whether it's alcohol, blazing it, everyone's got their own vice. I would say one that helps is, you know, you all go out, get drinks after a viewing or something. Laugh about how they looked, all right? Get drunk. That is definitely something I've done. Or just get high and imagine that you're still able to talk to that person in the conversation. I do that a lot. Actually. Get high. I'd be saying some shit to the sky. Like, you know how you pray? When people pray to God, I would say, like, when shit happens to me that's funny and there's no one around, I'll just go off to the side and be like, you saw that, right? Like, Nana, you had to be laughing on the other side. That shit was funny. Yeah. Numb is, like I said, that blanking effect where you could just create your emotions to be so subtle that no one knows what's going on. And I would say just not letting things bother you so deeply, or just sucking it in until you have time to express. So you're just numbing that feeling, like how you go to the dentist and they give you that numbing spray so you don't feel the cavity or the numbing injection. It only lasts a few hours. Eventually you're going to have to feel your feelings. Numbness is not for everyone, so I don't think it's a positive thing to where everyone should practice it. I feel like some people need to face their emotions then and there, but I feel like if you already have a tough time dealing with your emotions and something tragic happens to you, it may be better to numb the effect